Hello and welcome to this week's review of My Hero Academia. This week I'm reviewing the episode titled The Story of How We All Became Heroes. Before we get into the review, I just want to say very quickly, I apologise if you hear any kind of machine noises in the background. It's getting into summertime now, I've got the window open and there's someone out there with an angle grinder, because that always happens when the weather gets warm around here. But anyway, with all that said and done, let us get into this review and start off, as we always do with these reviews, by talking about the positives. And the headline positives for this review is that this is an episode which, let's be honest, was supposed to be connecting tissue and setup, and yet it feels as feature complete as an episode as you ever could have wanted. It with some really strong, powerful, emotive moments throughout, and some fine, somewhat effective comedy sprinkled in here and there. The thrust of this episode, like this, as I've just mentioned, is to set up for later plot points in this season, or at least in the later half of it, or at least for the later part of this half, or at least for the next few episodes. Basically, this is the point of the episode, or the point in the series, I should say, where we are just in the point of setup, setting up for bigger things coming down the pipeline as this particular series comes along. This is like the midway point between two major moments. I have to say, though, that even with that in mind, this episode really did go above and beyond as far as my expectations were concerned. I thought that was pretty much just going to be the case. This was just going to be another connecting tissue kind of episode, but it frankly wasn't. There was a lot to really enjoy here. In this episode, our heroes are trying to develop a plan to use Aoyama's connection with All For One to try and get one over on him. The big plan that we end up seeing explained later in the episode is to separate All For One from Tomura, and then from Tomura to be separated from Dabi, also separated from Spinner, also separated from Toga, also separated from Skeptic, also separated from Tito, also separated from Michael, also separated from Ringo, also separated from Randy, also separated from George. You get the idea. In order to do this, I really don't know what they're going to do. I suppose they're going to end up feeding some kind of fake plan to Aoyama, so that he in turn can feed it to AFO, and then they'll all be spread out all across the city or all across the country, whichever scale they're going to be wanting to work with this. But they did say they want a gap of like 10 kilometers or so we'll see how well or not they're able to pull that one off. I don't know exactly how they're going to separate people. I suppose he could tell them that the local radio station is giving away free tickets to see D-Ream if you appear in a certain location and sing Things Can Only Get Better, or maybe it's a contest where you can win free spam if you sing that particular theme song.
Spam up and get out the can. Spam up. Just to feed your man.
Typically with episodes like this, like I say, this is supposed to be a matter of procedural planning. This is supposed to be a matter of our characters just figuring out what the next step is going to be, or essentially the writer saying, okay, this is what we're going to be doing next week, the week after that. Usually with a few gags thrown here and there, a little bit, and I mean a little bit of character development and character drama, and that's just about it. We've seen these episodes dozens of times throughout this entire series thus far, as well as in other TV series, whether they be superhero-based or not. And whilst that is still ultimately the case here, this is still ultimately modus operandi and what the end goal is, I have to say that it does it very well. We are still very much in the aftermath of Aoyama's betrayal, and this episode kicks off with it. There is a part of me that wonders if front-loading the episode with so much drama was a good idea, as it does feel as though we're getting into this rather strong. It has the same kind of effect to me as if you end up starting an episode immediately kicking off with an action sequence, or being midway through an action sequence, as I feel at that point it means that the audience is having to gear up and get into speed with everything that's going on here, but given its drama, you're having to get into the right mindset to be able to appreciate what's going on here. But on the other hand, where else would you put it? I mean, you can't put it on later in the episode. You can't put it in the previous episode, because that would effectively mean that that big emotional crescendo moment is immediately followed up by another emotional crescendo moment. I think that it still is effective enough for what it is. As I mentioned previously, a lot of this particular story arc has been diminished due to prior spoilers, so whilst I do appreciate it, regretfully, it itself is not quite as effective as I would have liked it to have been. With that said, however, I will say that the scene that we get towards the end of the episode with Eraserhead and Aoyama is far more effective for me, because beyond anything else, spoilers or not, it doesn't feel like we're going over old ground. I don't want to end up saying anything negative at this point, and even then it's not a major negative, but it does feel as though the opening drama was still pretty much saying what we said last week, you know, the whole thing of we're your friends and we're going to hecking save the day together. Cute, good, fine, works for this show, not got any problems with that, but to essentially get it twice, one immediately after the other, it doesn't quite land for me, but hey, there's worse things to be critical of. I think the light comedy that we get in the middle of the episode was fine. I think that with comedy especially, it's an intensely subjective thing for me. Different strokes for different folks on all that. And I will say is I think for people who have been more deeply affected by the drama thus far, this will have been a much needed tonic. I mean, it might not land for me, mostly due to the fact that I'm not someone who's thinking, oh god, can we please have something light to, you know, make us feel as though we're not going to go insane here. But even in that sense, you know, I think it would have worked effectively, but I do feel it feels a little bit out of place for me, especially the physical humour bit with Tenya and Aoyama getting their faces caved in. I mean, it works in that moment, it works in the scene that it happens in, but the fact that then it holds over into a scene with a very serious speech by Mount Lady, it does take something from that. It feels as though the pacing of the joke isn't quite there, which is something I did criticise last week. I mean, it's a problem that I had with a previous episode, and it's something that keeps coming up now and again, but you know, again, I suppose this is another different show, so a different folks thing. I think for other people it will work, but for me, right now, I'm more interested in a lot more of the drama than necessarily in the comedy, which is kind of weird for anyone that's been watching and listening to my commentary and my reviews thus far, because I'm someone that keeps saying, oh no, we need more light moments, we need more moments of comedy and our characters goofing around and doing stupid shit. For me to all of a sudden turn around and say, no, guys, we mean no drama. I don't know, maybe the heat's starting to get to me, but you get the idea. There's times and a place for all that. I think it worked perfectly fine in the scene in which it took place in. That whole scene with Hatsume, I'll discuss that in more detail shortly, but I think that scene was good in and of itself. It's reuniting us with a character who I don't think we've seen in a very long time. I don't want to say we haven't seen her since the tournament arc stuff. I'm sure that someone in the comment section will correct me one way or the other. I think we've seen her more recently than that, but still good to see the character, even if they ultimately didn't contribute much. We've discovered that the entire tech department, what is essentially the woodworking and electronics department of the high school, is now having to work on security. They're now having to literally work on security. They're having to work on the maintenance of the walls and developing an evacuation system, all that kind of stuff. Because, yeah, that's where they are now. And as Tenya mentions in a neat little bit of world building and lore, pretty much every major corporation and industry in Japan right now has shut up doors or done a runner, so the usual places that they would go to get their hero equipment maintained and upgraded and repaired just isn't available right now, which, sure, I like that. It's a nice little touch of things. It just once again reinforces that things still aren't exactly pucker out there in the wider area of Japan, which is something we haven't really seen that much of this season, because quite frankly, you know, we're only a handful of episodes into it and we are now focused a lot more on our characters and what's going on with them right now, rather than building up the wider world, and it's just a confirmation of just the way that things just currently are right now. I appreciate it. I think that it ends up working well. Something that did stick out to me is the fact that the whole compression bands that Midoriya wears to make sure his arms don't explode, they're referred to as being a prototype from overseas, which I will admit is a little bit weird to me. Like, I get it. They come from a movie. They come from the first movie, and all the movies and their canonicity is nebulous at best. I think it's very much like with the Doctor Who books that you ended up seeing in the Wilderness years, and even still now, where their canonicity is, well, it's as canon as you want them to be. And I think that's the case, certainly with the movies of My Hero Academia. But the fact that we saw a young Star and Stripe in the first movie, and that we get it confirmed that that is her in the previous couple episodes or so with a flashback I think is directly taken from that first movie, it feels weird to me that they're still just being nebulous and being weird and vague as to where these compression bands come from. I guess it's because they don't want to introduce a character so removed from everything just for the sake of a nod to a movie. They don't want to confuse things. I don't know what else it could otherwise be, and the fact they're referring to, well, again, overseas, if they said it came from Ireland, it would be canonising the movie somewhat, and I think they're wanting to keep that vague for some reason, I don't know. It's a weird little thing, nothing to really rag on the episode for, but it is still something that did stick out to me, because I haven't now seen all the movies, hey, apart from the most recent one, which isn't coming out for a few more weeks. As I mentioned previously, I think that the closing scene with Aoyama and Razorhead was the most effective one that we've had thus far from this particular part of the story arc. All the other stuff, like I said, I appreciate it. I think it works for what it is. It's still a matter of love and friendship saves the day. Okay, good, fine. That's good for this kind of program. It works in the context of this kind of program, the story that it's ultimately going for. But I do appreciate this one because it feels a lot more broad in certain regards. This is about trying to overcome fear and self-doubt. It's about overcoming personal trauma and having someone trying to help someone else overcome their trauma whilst at the same time still dealing with theirs. We get that little bit of a snapshot into Eraserhead's own backstory with his own regrets and him trying to essentially in some regards pay it forward and to help someone else not go down a similar kind of dark path that he and, well, one of his friends certainly ended up going from what we've ended up seeing from stuff said in the background. I do appreciate this scene. I do love this scene. I think it's very good. I think it's very effective. Could it be more effective? But I just think that that's more of a personal taste thing, like I say. Even though this was the most effective scene, whilst I think it did work the best, there is still that part in the back of my mind that's just thinking, yeah, if I didn't have this spoilt for me, this would have been great. But still, it's good for what it is. I can appreciate it for what it is, even if it's not as effective as I would have liked it to. But still, it's still incredibly effective for what it is. Now we're going to move on into the negatives, and there's only two, and one, once again, it's incredibly nitpicky, but it's something I've just touched upon previously, which is that I think that the gags themselves, the timing of them wasn't great, especially the one with the whole face getting knocked in thing. I think that took away from the seriousness of the scene with Mount Lady. It didn't really work for me. It took something away from that, and it could easily have been done without it. It just was a little bit too goofy for its own worth and did take something away from that moment. It didn't need to happen, but at the same time, it's such a minor thing that I don't think, anyone's exactly going to sit here and go, My Hero Academia is ruined because of this thing happened. On a more pointed point of criticism, more focused point of criticism, I should say, I think that the scene with Hatsume went by a little bit too quickly. There's so much exposition in that scene that it feels as though everything's just getting barreled through. We're just getting it all delivered to us as quickly as possible. Yes, I know that the character of Hatsume, regardless of whether we're watching this subtitled or dubbed, is something of a fast talker. But with her and everyone else in that scene, it feels as though we're just running through stuff as quickly as possible in a way that just feels really odd to me. Like, it is neat to see that effectively the entire school at this point is being turned into one massive hero agency, one big hero industry, so to make sure that the walls and security and everything to do with keeping this whole little camp going is working. That's a neat idea. I'd like to see more of that, and it is neat seeing it in the here and now if this is all we're going to end up getting of it. But it feels as though at the end of the day, all that neat stuff is pushed to one side. All the stuff about developing the equipment and how stretched they are for resources, pushed to one side. Connecting with Hatsume and her seemingly being oblivious as to what's happening in the wider world, pushed over almost. She's at least cognizant of the fact that they've had to build a giant wall and she has to maintain it to stop bad guys getting into it, but the fact she doesn't seem to understand that Japan's just gone to shit. It's an interesting idea, but again, they've not really gone with it. Or did they go with it? And she actually does know more than she's letting on, and she was just like a brain fart moment. I don't know. It's a little bit too confused because we go through that entire sequence of events so quickly it doesn't even leave much of an impact for me. There's some good bits within it, some good moments of comedy. It did look for a couple seconds there like we were going to get a couple two temporary one-off characters helping to save the day and build up some equipment for them. But Hatsume managed to work so quickly that, hey, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Sorry, guys, you're not getting your cameo appearance this week. You're not going to be appearing in a What Me video anytime soon. What if these two fuckers made the guy's equipment? Who knows? That's a mystery for a whole other future time. But anyway, we now pivot into the overview, and I have to say that, like I mentioned towards the start of this review, this is an episode which, let's be honest, should just have been connecting tissue. Some light drama, some fallout from last week, a little bit of a teaser stuff to come, but that's just about it. A few jokes sprinkled in here and there, but at the end of the day, a lightweight episode that, you know, we don't look back at as being one of the best, but we don't look back at it being as one of the worst. With all that said and done, however, I have to say that this is an incredibly effective episode, as not only is it able to do all that, it's able to do that and more. It's still able to be effective from an emotional level. It's still able to be effective in some regards of a comedy level, even though that's not from me. I still think that the best material here is all the stuff to do with Aoyama and Eraserhead. That scene towards the end of it is great for what it is. I think that itself works a lot better for me because it's a little bit more universal. It's not quite a love and friendship saves the day thing. I think it's great. I think it's good, and I wish there was more of that. Maybe we'll get more of that kind of tone going forward. We'll soon see about that. We're all said and done, however, it's time for Comment Corner! It's time for Comment Corner. If I ever get some money together, I'm getting a professional jingle made of that. Anyway, time for Comment Corner, where I read your comments and just reflect upon them. So kicking off once again with Big X1, who says, I like this episode a lot. I had forgotten about the UA Mole story, to be honest. Thank you for your comment, and, well, it was something that always bared in the back of my mind, because there's a part of me that was always wondering, okay, is the fact that they said, oh yeah, there's no mole whatsoever, is that them trying to pull a fast one here? Are they just saying, actually, no, there really is a mole, then it's coming soon, don't you worry? Or did they really be honest with that and say there actually isn't? We've changed our mind for the story of this. I don't know, but it turns out, yeah, there was one. I will admit that the whole thing of it getting spoilt ahead of time did mean that this was something of an iceberg moment. It was a case of, okay, so when's the reveal gonna be? When's it gonna be? Is it gonna be this season? Gonna be next season? When's it gonna be? It had to. I think that actually, you know what? Forget it. I was about to discuss something I was going to discuss with regards to the next comment, so we'll get into that and we'll discuss that. So next comes Scott TV Gamer, who says apparently the author intended for to reveal the traitor all the way back in the training camp, but I don't know if it's confirmed. But it's believed that he made the decision to cut the arc short because it wasn't performing very well when it initially came out. I can imagine that he was struggling to find another way to reveal it, but I think he found a nice alternative, so to speak. Thank you for your comment, and I think that it would have been a bit much for them to reveal it during the training camp stuff. I can understand the feeling as to why that would be a good moment, because let's face it, that's one of the moments where Aoyama is in the main focus, and I think that it would have been an effective time to do it. I just think that given everything else, it would have been a bit too much to deal with, a bit too much drama there. But I suppose it is an interesting question as to what have happened and this whole reveal of Aoyama being the traitor happened back then. Maybe it's a what if idea. Ooh, scene for the future. There is a part of me that was just about to discuss just then as to, okay, so when would have been a good timing for it? When would have been a good time to do the reveal of it? And I think that at the end of the day, if it wasn't going to be the training arc, because like I said, I think it would have been a bit too congested, it was either better to have it happen here or maybe during the school festival stuff. Like, either one of those three locations, I think the school festival stuff would have been a good second place, but even then you'd take away with the stuff with Gentle Criminal and the Barber, which I still think is one of my favourite stuff that we've had thus far in My Hero Academia. So I think this point works out well. I suppose they could have just kick the can all the way down the road and never have it revealed at all. Then it would have been just some neat little thing they mentioned in an interview a few years down the line, or maybe it would be something that would be revealed in like a reunion episode, like an episode that's set like a few years after the whole events of My Hero Academia concluded. They all gather together, they're all enjoying life in a peaceful, slowly rebuilding world, and then Aoyama comes up and says, okay guys, bon chance, I've got a problem. I'm not so much a problem. I've got something to tell you. You know, back when we were in UA and a lot of weird, sussy stuff was happening? Well, I was a traitor all along, but hey, at least we saved the day, so please don't arrest me. Just this big reveal, this big thing of him coming out as being the traitor there and then. years after the fact, years after it's all concluded. I don't know, I found something weirdly amusing about it. But anyway, let me all know what you thought about in the case episode in the comment section down below. A big thank you to all the new subscribers that we have had. Over the past week or so, we've had I don't even know, I think it's like 5 new subscribers, which I do enjoy and I do appreciate. We don't really have a big subscriber goal this year, but I would like to hit 120 by the end of the year. I don't think we're hitting 200 by the end of the year. That would be lovely, but still probably not do. But anyway, before that's said and done, thank you all for commenting, thank you all for watching, and see you next time. Goodbye! Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, favourite, subscribe, click the bell, and do all the YouTubey stuff that YouTube wants you to do. Go on, it'll do me a power of good. Until next time, my friends, goodbye!